worried about Neuralink because you're going to have to slip a little chip into you, and that's the next thing. We're going to have to actually bind with technology. Bind. It has to be not separate, not outside, but interior.
Is that kind of technology going to be somewhere along the lines of Neuralink, where we're using our synapses and our senses, so less something that is making your hand wet on the outside and more making you perceive the feelings of being in the ocean, being warm, being cold? Am I jabbing in roughly the right direction?
No, I think it could easily be Neuralink. You know, Elon Musk is working right on Neuralink. Yeah, it could be Neuralink. Definitely could be. People are going to be a little bit worried about Neuralink because you're going to have to slip a little chip into you, and that's the next thing. We're going to have to actually bind with technology. Bind. It has to be not separate, not outside, but interior, in your interior. So I say to people, if you have a new knee, you have actually created part you in robotic terms. So, don't be scared of slipping a little link in, and then you can go so much more freely. The idea is that we have to hold our phones and look at it should be in the air, and everything should be in your fingers, the Neuralinks. So the idea that you have to even think of a code to get in somewhere. And in certain places, you do have a little chip you can go in, but that's as far as they've gotten. If a cop stops you and says, I want to see your license and registration, no more scrambling. You just put it up there, in the air. Yeah. And art has changed, digital art. I mean, it's quite a moment of transition.
It really is. And I think that you're right. I think, pacemaker, contacts in your eyes. I think that people don't realize we're on more of this. We're already on this journey. And we've said this before. One of my favorite quotes is people underestimate or overestimate what can be done in a year and underestimate what can be done in 10. And exactly. I think that's really going to be the kind of realization, I think, for a lot of today's marketers as we get closer and closer to this meta life.
Right on. That's exactly right.
We plan to launch a pilot stage of the Digital Ruble project on April 1st, with transactions between individuals and payments in trade and service enterprises at this stage. I would like to draw your attention right away that the pilot will be based on real operations, real clients, but on a limited number of operations and on a limited number of clients, with 13 banks that have already technically confirmed their readiness.
For the technologically adverse like myself, what's a digital ruble?
Yeah, that's a great question, Union. So really a digital ruble is not really, for the common user, it's no real different than the rubles you have in your bank account or dollars or euros. The only difference really is that instead of it being a number that's sort of randomly printed on a screen that can be inflated, it's actually built on blockchain technology and issued in a way whereas you'll have to account for every 1 ruble that is in the bank to the rubles that are actually in circulation. Let's take a cryptocurrency. Let's say Bitcoin, Union, it's the most widely known cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin, when the payment is processed, what happens is the computer systems and what crypto people call nodes, so the computer system that verifies that transaction happened is anonymous and decentralized. In the case of CBDCs that we're discussing now, those nodes or those computer systems are centralized, i.e. they belong to in this case, to the Central Bank of Russia, so they can make sure that there's no nefarious activity happening when those transactions are processed.
Understood.
I think a lot of the cryptocurrency maximalists may not like where this is going. However, this is a technology that is developing and evolving all the time.
And we want more and more people to use it.
And we want adoption. We want more people to use it. And unfortunately, I think in order for more people to use things, you are going to need the support of governments. And governments are going to need to have more oversight as to how these transactions occur.
What's the difference between me going with my debit card and paying for things with a digital ruble? What is the planned difference between that?
Yeah, so really absolutely nothing to you as a user, Union. But the fundamental difference is you're not going to have these cumbersome payment networks involved. So, for example, your debit card, if we're talking to our viewers in the West, they'll be using MasterCard and Visa. So MasterCard and Visa will be taking a chunk of a fee in order to process that transaction. This way, that transaction happens directly from Russia's central bank to the merchant or the shop or wherever you're buying your goods. So that middleman is essentially cut out.
Understood. Okay. In terms then of benefits, will people be able to use these digital rubles when a network connection is unavailable? You know, there could be issues like that, right?
Yeah, so reading the white paper from the Russian central bank, they're saying, yes, you can. Now, how they actually do that, we'll have to see when they come up with more color. But I imagine it will be the same way as if you've ever been on an aeroplane and you've paid for something on your card. That transaction isn't actually processed because you're in the air. There's no internet connection to actually process it. So what happens is when the plane lands, that transaction is then processed by the machine. It will probably be a similar mechanism.
Chris, other countries, are they planning similar? Is Russia to the avant-garde of this? Are they climbing on the back of somebody else, piggybacking? What's happening?
So Russia's pretty far ahead in the fact that they've said they're implementing. However, China was the first mover. So back in April 2021, which is around the same time, Russia's saying April 2023. April 2021, China conducted what they called their first public pilot. And now in China, the digital renminbi is used quite widely across China. So it's not the first, but it's definitely a brave move. And also, the Bank of Japan announced today that they're also going to launch the digital Chinese yuan at the same time that Russia is. So I think we're probably going to see a whole vast array of countries start moving in this direction.